Jack, you've done, I think, the best job of anybody in covering Wisconsin. You covered the first, I think, on your Periscope. It was 3 hours. You did live stream with the classic Jack Posobiec commentary that we're so used to. Talk to us first about what's going to happen today in Wisconsin, because the mainstream media, they're saying, hey, Trump paid $3 million and it shifted to 122 votes. What a moron, right? What really went on in this audit over the weekend? How did they have to do it like that? And they made a strategic decision to be quiet about it. They didn't get out there and push that in the stories. And the reason is this morning and what's going to happen right after. So, Posobiec, walk us through, which we've said on this show for weeks, the lowest hanging fruit is Wisconsin. And in Wisconsin, you have the new Iron Brigade is not going to back down, led by Spindall. Take it away, Posobiec.
Yeah, Steve, that's exactly right. And in fact, one thing that I have been told by members of the team up there is that they do actually think Wisconsin, of all the states, really is the one that seems to be the most likely to flip, the one where they can get action and traction on these outstanding issues of discrepancies. And we've talked about the three different avenues of problems that went on in Wisconsin in the past. So there's two things that are going to happen today. Number one, you're going to hear Dean Knudsen and Bob the Great Spindell talk about the USS Spindell, really talk about their response to this recount. And I want to be very clear to everybody that they knew that the recount would essentially affirm the same count as before. The issue was that they were going through and systematically having Trump supporters, Trump legal observers go through with these ballots, and in specifically Dane County, not really so much for Milwaukee County, Bob will get into that more later, where they were actually able to sit with just a pane of plexiglass in between them and actually review the ballots, right? For the first time anywhere, actually review what was written on these ballots. They were then able to make legal challenges. There were also legal challenges that were done in Milwaukee County. So between the two, you're definitely going to see north of 100,000 ballots that will now be challenged by the Trump campaign in lawsuits going forward. And so this was always the plan. The plan was not necessarily to just recount what had been done on November 3rd to affirm that. The idea was this recount process, specifically in the two states that were targeted, or two counties that were targeted, Dane and Milwaukee, where Biden did have that 2-to-1 ratio, that gave you access to be able to sit down and go through these ballots, to audit them, to see what was actually written on them, where they could say, you know what, we're not going to take your word for it anymore, like Josh Shapiro and Kathy Boockvar in Pennsylvania. We're going to sit down with the legal team. And by the way, invite the Democrats to sit down right next to us so we can take a look at them and they can be there to explain any questions that may arise. So you're going to see Bob respond to that as well. But there's a second piece because of Governor Evers and what he did yesterday.
Okay, I want to hang on for that for a second because I want to go back to make sure our audience fully understands this. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, one falls, they all fall. Okay, this will be a domino effect, because the rats will start scurrying off the ships. One falls, they all fall. The reason Wisconsin's perfect is you have these Dean Knudsen and Bob Spindall are like from a Norman Rockwell. They're just average. They're average American citizens, but they're not going to back down. I want to go back in time though, and we're going to hold you over for the next one because people have to understand this. I want to go back in time to this all-night commission meeting where the Democrats, and this is how they roll. This is what cheaters they are. Talk to them about this manual, how they try to sit there and change the manual to comport to state law because they got caught red-handed. There are two. This is going to be over 100,000 votes. And there's two scams going on. There's an early voting scam using absentee ballots. There's no early voting in Wisconsin. They had a scam. They got caught dead to rights. There's also this scam where you have these indefinitely people that are like in nursing homes, etc. They can get a ballot. Normally, I think it's between 15,000 or 20,000, something like that. Indefinitely confined, I think the term is, the term of art, the nomenclature. 235,000. Complete scam. We know this from the guys in Switzerland, other people we work with. This is how they're stealing it, okay? They were caught red-handed in Wisconsin, not by fire breathers, by Wisconsin Nice. But Wisconsin Nice also has a spine of steel, and will say, nope, that's just not the way, that's not the rules, right? Go back to what happened on that meeting that you covered for like until 1 a.m. What did the Democrats try to do in trying to change this manual, Jack Posobiec?
What they were trying to do is exactly what we just outlined. They were trying to make the recount be a non-audit. So originally, and Wisconsin does recounts differently than any other state. Richard Barris talked about this way before this even started. He's the one who identified this first. I think it was the first that I heard it from, that Wisconsin, a recount is actually a strict audit of ballot by ballot going through this vote. What they were trying to do was they were trying to use COVID as an imprimatur to go in and change these fundamental cornerstones of the recount process in Wisconsin to make it essentially just a recount, one of these, we'd call them like a fake audit, like was done in Georgia and some of the others, where they're not actually checking anything. They're not checking ballot integrity. They're not checking signatures. They're not checking addresses for their fullness. They're not checking to see who completed it. Was it clerk cured? So clerk curing, that's something that you're going to hear about very much. That's going to be looked at. This is, and again, completely illegal. Also, they're digging into the absentee ballot process themselves. Something where the Trump lawyer, one of the lead lawyers there in Wisconsin, said, "Look, if this invalidates my vote and the vote of my wife, then so be it, because this was an unconstitutional process and we're here to stand on the side of the rule of law." So what they were trying to do in that commission was to wave that all to the side, to push that all to the side, and to make it so that it would simply skip past all of those steps and all of those safeguards and all of those checks that were pre-built into Wisconsin recounts. And what Bob and Dean said was, they did the old William F. Buckley Jr. adage of two men standing athwart history saying, "Stop."